So, uh, we just had I tried to do a previous live stream for this video, and it just had sound problems. I hope we got it all fixed now. I hope you can hear me now, but do a couple of announcements and then get in this list. Hey guys, and welcome back to CM Rank News and Views. And I hope you enjoyed this live stream. And normally I don't do live streams for ranking videos, but I thought I would for this because there are 55 movies to rank, and it'd be so long, it'd take forever to upload. And I just thought I would knock this video out now. Let me just see if the sound is working. So yeah, we're gonna jump into this. So the sound is currently working. I just checked out the live stream on my phone, and the sound is coming through. So let's get into this. But first, I wanted to say I only seen 55 movies this year. I didn't see a lot of the bigger movies like Dune or The Conjuring 3. I didn't see any of those because I didn't have time. I couldn't see all the major movies, but next year I'm going to try to get more of those bigger movies in and, really just watch a lot more movies, because 55, well, it does seem like a lot compared to some other people. It's not, but this is going to be a pretty long live stream, so let's get into it. So we're going to start off with 55. In 55 place is Thunder Force. Thunder Force is a bad movie. To me, Thunder Force is just horrible. I think this is the worst superhero movie I've ever seen. It's got a lot of elements that could have worked, like we have Octavia Spencer and Jason Bateman in here, but they're just not good in here. Apparently the stream is lagging. Well, this thing that I'm using, it tends to do that sometimes, but hopefully it catches up. But Thunder Force is a mix of just bad things. It's just all around bad, because you have these two actresses who are good actresses. One of them's Melissa McCarthy, can be funny at times. Octavia Spencer is a phenomenal actress, and to me, it just doesn't work. I think some of the jokes in here when they're eating raw chicken, and it's just disgusting. It's not funny. This feels like an Adam Sandler movie, but even those I enjoy parts of. For me, there's just nothing really redeeming about this movie. Jason Bateman's really phoning it in. He doesn't really give that great of a performance, and I just wish they didn't make this movie. Ben Falcone directed this movie, and he doesn't have a very great track record directing movies. But to me, it's sloppy. Some of the jokes are like almost unbearable to listen to, and to me, it doesn't work. It's just all around, to me, a horrible movie. And I don't know why Netflix makes movies like this, but people watch them because this was trending on Netflix for a long time. Let's move on now to 54th place, which is Outside the Wire. Outside the Wire is a movie that I wanted to like. I like Anthony Mackie a lot as an actor, and I think he really is talented, especially in like The Falcon and the Winter Soldier and the MCU. He's a great actor. This movie isn't that good. To me, this movie is so boring, it's almost hard to watch. And I think this is the major consensus on this movie. I don't hear a lot of people praising this movie, and to me, it was not enjoyable. I think it was too long. It's like 2.5 hours. Anthony Mackie does an okay job in the title role, but to me, it's too long, and it has nothing to tell. It has hey Morris, and we got Peter. We got two people in the live chat, but thank you guys for watching this. But anyways, we have this movie, and it's so long, it just doesn't work. It's so boring. They have nothing. It feels very like kind of a ripoff of Avatar, and it does not work. I just do not care about this movie. It's very forgettable. And when you have a boring, forgettable movie that doesn't know what ripping off other movies, you just a good movie. It's not very good. And to me, that's kind of a disappointment because again, Anthony Mackie is such a great actor, and to see him make a movie like this, I don't know. To me, it doesn't work, and I think they could have made a better movie. Again, this is also on Netflix, so the bottom two movies on my list, both by Netflix, both horrible movies. Let's move on to 53. In 53rd place for me is Earwig and the Witch. Now, I love Studio Ghibli. I think they're one of the best studios, period, not just animation. But when you have a movie like this, it's bad. I think the worst part of this is Studio Ghibli made it because they're such a great studio. For them to make a movie like this really just falls down because this movie, it's so boring and there's no real story or real motivation for the characters in here. Plus the animation, they try to do this anime CGI. It doesn't. It could look really good, but how they made it just doesn't look good. Again, the story doesn't make any sense because, well, there is really no real story, and that is a big problem with this movie. It's on HBO Max. I think it was a TV movie at first, or it went into some theaters, and then it went on to HBO Max. I don't know. This has a very complicated release schedule, and honestly, I hope they didn't release this movie at all. I wish they didn't. To me, it's just not a very good movie because, again, the animation is just bad for what Studio Ghibli um, normally does. But I don't know. There's just something about this movie that I don't care about, and that's why this is in 53rd place and the third worst movie I've seen this year. Also, I just want to say the bottom 10 haven't changed since my last video of doing my top 10 worst movies of 2021. It's the same. So, but the top 10 has changed a bit. I did watch two new movies and they're both in the top 10. So, compared to my other top 10 favorites of 2021, there are some changes. So, there is going to be everything else. The bottom 10 and the top 10 are kind of the same, but in the middle is kind of where a lot of movies I haven't talked about yet on my channel are going to be. In 52nd place for me is America the Motion Picture. This movie could have been good. It unfortunately, it's not even good. This movie was a pain to get through. I absolutely despise America the Motion Picture. To me, if you do something like this, if you do a spoof movie, do it well. This is not well. There's so much gross out humor. It's not funny. There's a lot of characters that they just change so much that you don't even know what historical figure they are. And that's a problem. When you have to look it up, that's a problem. The voice acting is okay, but to me, it's just a sloppy movie it's made by the people who made the Lego movie, so I thought it was going to be great. This is their worst movie, I think. I honestly did not care for this movie. I kept checking how much longer was left because it goes by like the humor, the pacing goes by so fast. It's like you don't know what's going on. So the characters are so weird and the gross out humor is so gross. It's just a movie that doesn't land. And to me, that's a disappointment because I think it's the Miller or somebody, I forget their names, but they made the Lego movie and Into the Spider-Verse. So I thought this was going to be a great movie, and it's not. It's actually a really bad movie. So that's a real disappointment, but it comes in as the fourth worst movie I saw this year, which again really sucks, but what are you going to do? This is also Netflix. So the bottom four movies, 3 out of the 4 are Netflix, and one of them is HBO Max. I do want to say movies I saw in theaters would be higher on this list because just the experience of going to the movies again is so great. And it does actually make you enjoy the movie a lot more when you're actually seeing it in the theater with a crowd. So that's why those might be higher up, and streaming movies are probably going to be lower. Also, movies they put in theaters are normally of higher quality. But let's move on to 51st place, which for me is Bigfoot Family. This is another, and it's bad. The animation in this really, it's one of those movies that just has the horrible animation. I feel like nowadays with streaming services, they're really pushing these movies more and more, just more horrible animated movies. And to me, this one is joins the crowd of all those bad movies. It's where do I start? First of all, again, the animation sucks, but this is some of the worst voice acting I've ever heard. You have like a 40-year-old man playing a 9-year-old boy, and it's so off-putting, it kind of takes you out of the movie. It's also overly preachy, which having a message is good in movies, but when that's all you're talking about and the voice acting sucks, it's hard to get across, and it doesn't work very well, and this movie seems lazy. This is a sequel to Son of Bigfoot, which I haven't watched, but again, it's another one of those bad animated movies. But to me, this is just a horrible sequel, just a bad movie in general. And I did not care for this movie. So it's a real disappointment. But again, I didn't have really any expectations going into this movie because I've never seen the original, and honestly, nothing really excited me about this movie. I just decided to watch it so I could have more movies on this list, and it was a mistake because this movie was just bad. In 50th place, Locked Down. This is the movie with Anne Hathaway, and this is one of the worst kind of conceptions of a movie because it's advertised as a heist movie. It's advertised as a fun heist movie. It takes place in COVID, and it's about like 2 hours and 20 minutes. And about an hour and 50 minutes of that, actually, it's more like 2 hours of that, are just them stuck in their home arguing. And the problem with this is it's extremely boring, and they marketed horribly because they marketed as a heist film, but the heist only lasts like 10 minutes, goes by fast, and the heist itself is boring. It sucks. It doesn't have any real merit to it. We spend 2 hours of this movie just hanging out with the two leads, but they're having relationship issues. It's COVID. They're stuck inside. But you didn't come into this movie hoping to see that. And this movie came on HBO Max. Again, wasn't really excited for this movie, but it had Anne Hathaway. So I was kind of looking forward to it. But after watching it, I wish I never watched this movie because it's such a sloppy mess of and a mix of a film that to me, it does not work. And this is probably one of the movies that could have been great because you do have a phenomenal cast in Anne Hathaway, and there's Ben Stiller's in this movie. It's just a great cast, but to me, one of the biggest disappointments of the year, and just one of the movies that to me could have been great, but fell on its head. On to 49. Charming. This is the first movie I saw this year. Again, I watched it so I could have more movies to talk about. And this is a Shrek ripoff. It has bad animation. Again, it literally copies like the exact same plot of Shrek, except for they change in characters. And I don't care about any of these characters in here. Like, if you make me care about the characters, sure, that's cool. But I didn't care about any of the characters in here. To me, it was a sloppy mess, a ripoff of Shrek. I'm fine with movies spoofing other movies, but when you take their like exact plot and you just switch out characters and you put in other plot beats, it doesn't work, and not a good movie. To me, this movie falls way below what I was expecting. I was hoping it'd be better because the voice cast is okay. They don't do a great job, but they do have some pretty big names in here. But to me, again, it's a ripoff of Shrek, which Shrek's one of my favorite movies. So to rip it off and not do a good job really kind of is disappointing, but it's also kind of annoying. And this is also a Netflix movie. So you see the trend for these bottom movies. Two of them were HBO Max movies, and the rest were Netflix. Put out some better content. I mean, Disney Plus and Hulu at least put out mediocre movies, normally at worst, but they don't put out crap like the bottom of this list because these movies are all just horrible and there's barely anything redeeming about most of these movies. But let's move on to 48. Whoops, I skipped it. 48, Coming to America. Now, I talked about this in my previous worst movies of 2021, and I was looking forward to this. I was looking forward to how they would continue the story because I enjoy the original Coming to America. But this movie is one of the worst sequels of the year. What they do is they destroy Eddie Murphy's character. Because in the first movie, he doesn't really know what's happening. That's kind of where the comedy comes from. But in here, they make him such a jerk and so unlikable that it kind of undoes what the first movie really was. And to me, it doesn't work. I don't think I laughed probably once in this movie. Arsenio Hall does an okay job, but some of the humor in here just does not work. And it's kind of sad because, again, I did enjoy the first movie, but most comedy sequels that come out like 20 years after the original, they're normally not good. This was on Amazon Prime, and not a good movie. I think there is a difference between this and the other half of these bottom movies, but I still think Coming to America is a bad movie, but I think there are some enjoyable parts. I think Eddie Murphy, while they do change his character a lot, I think he's still enjoyable in this movie. But they just kind of change his character too much, and to me, it falls flat. In 47th place for me is the SpongeBob movie, Sponge on the Run. Now, I absolutely love the first two SpongeBob movies, even Sponge Out of Water. But so I was looking forward to this to kind of make a trilogy of SpongeBob movies. I was disappointed because this movie is so chaotic, throws so many jokes at the screen. It doesn't really work, and it's really disappointing because I was looking forward to this, and I think I love the animation in here, but it feels like they're phoning it in just to put out another movie. This was on Paramount Plus, I believe, in the US, and I think it was in theaters in other countries. But I don't know. There's just something about this movie. It was too chaotic. The humor didn't work for most of it, for me at least. Why it does come in 47th place. I'm going to be doing two more movies, I believe, and then I'm going to be taking a 2-minute break. So let's just knock out these next two movies on this list and see if they're any good. Well, 46th place, Yes Day. Is it good? It's got redeeming qualities, but overall, it feels like such a familiar family movie, but really just some of the elements in here they handle so poorly that it's baffling how poorly they handled some of the characters in here, what the characters say, what the characters do. Like, you're supposed to like the kids, but they make them so unlikable, and this whole premise could be fun, but the execution is not fun. And this movie was pretty short, and just they're making a sequel to it. Jenna Ortega does a good job in here. She's going to be in the upcoming new Scream movie. She's a great actress, but she's one of my least favorite characters in this movie. She's really annoying. She's very unlikable. And that's kind of where my problem lies in this movie. Unlikable characters and kind of a sloppy plot. And I don't know, it feels like Alexander and the Terrible No Good Very Bad Day with Steve Carell and Jennifer Garner, I think, was in that movie. but it doesn't work. And I actually really enjoy the Alexander movie, but this movie, mm, I don't enjoy this movie. I don't think I'm gonna rewatch it. Just not a great movie. In 45th place, Tom and Jerry. Now, I previously talked about this movie, and I'm not a big fan of this one either. I was kind of looking forward to it. Not a big Tom and Jerry fan, mostly because I haven't watched Tom and Jerry that much. I've seen episodes and shorts here and there. I'm aware of what Tom and Jerry is, but in here, it feels like a familiar movie because it takes elements of a popular children's thing, whether it's the Smurfs, whether it's even Clifford the Big Red Dog, and they do this live. The Chipmunks, they take these live action, these cartoon characters, put them in live action settings, which is cool when the animation's done right, but they focus in all these movies too much on the human characters. Who goes into Tom and Jerry really wanting to know about this random guy's life story? You don't really care about that when you're going in to see Tom and Jerry getting into hijinks around New York City. You don't really want to see this other guy and his problems, and that's what the movie mainly focuses on. And Tom and Jerry take a back seat in their own movie. They're kind of cameos in here. They pop up every once in a while. Just a disappointing movie, in my opinion. It, to me, falls way too flat for a Tom and Jerry movie. I was looking forward to this, but it really just disappointed me. I was wishing it wasn't going to fall into the same trap that other movies like this were. I wish that it wasn't going to do the whole focus on the human characters thing, but it still did. And that was probably the biggest disappointment. This is probably the one of the biggest disappointments all year. I don't think it's the biggest, but it's definitely one of the biggest disappointments. And Tom and Jerry coming in at 45th place. I'm going to be taking a 2-minute break real quick, but I will be right back. Just again, a 2-minute break. I will be right back to do the rest of the list. And I cannot wait to talk about the rest of the movies on this list. So I am back. Just had to get a quick drink, but we are going to be talking now about the movies that I don't think are the worst of the year, but they're also not the best. These are kind of the middle of the road movies. Some of you may hate, others, some you may love, and they might be a little too low. But to me, these movies are just mostly okay, and most of them aren't the greatest movies. But again, I don't think they're the worst of the year, which is still kind of an accomplishment. So in 44th place actually is Home Sweet Home Alone. Now, some of you might be saying this should be the worst movie of the year, and I think it should, but there's just too many elements in this that I think actually work for me, and that I don't think it deserves to be on the worst of the year. But it's not a great movie because they do, to me, what is enjoyable is some of the acting. Like Ellie Kemper does a good job in this movie. They're the only redeeming things that kind of make this from being a horrible movie to an meh. It's okay movie, but it's still not a great movie. Good movie. I would not say this is a good movie, but this is the sixth Home Alone movie, I believe, and what they do with the villains, I think, is by far the worst thing that you could do in a Home Alone movie, and that is make the villains likable, make the hero unlikable. Because this because I mean, he's really unlike the most unlikable leads in the Home Alone franchise. No offense to Archie Yates, because he's a great actor. He was in Jojo Rabbit, and he was really good in there. But they make his character so unlikable in here that you don't want the villains to be hurt. You don't want them to be. It's not really fun seeing that balls get thrown at their heads, falling off roofs. That's not fun to see when you actually care about the villains because they're not really villains. This kid stole something from them, and they were just trying to get it back. So, and then this kid is so annoying that you don't want to see him like beat up the robbers because well they give you a backstory to the robbers, and it doesn't make it a good Home Alone movie or even a good movie because you're supposed to hate the villains and like the heroes because in the end you want the heroes to give the villains what they deserve. But in here you don't want to see that. And then at the end of the movie, the icing on the cake, they all have dinner together. The villains, the robbers, and the kid all have dinner together. Just one big misunderstanding. What a horrible Home Alone movie. But again, some of the acting does redeem it, but some of the decisions in here were just so bad. I don't know why they would even think to put some of these things in here. I don't know. Just not a great movie. It's not a good Home Alone movie, and it's a big disappointment for anybody who was kind of looking forward to this. But this is, if you watch the YouTube video for the trailer, it was the dislikes were out. There's way more dislikes than positives because most people don't want to see another Home Alone movie because again, we've already had 5 of them, 3 of which are bad movies. Number 4, the 4th Home Alone movie being probably one of the worst movies I've ever seen. Most people weren't looking forward to this, so I think that also has keeps into account like why some people put it as the worst movie of the year. I think there are redeeming qualities in this movie, but some of the decisions just make it so it's at 44. In 43rd place, The Woman in the Window. That's right. This was originally a 20th Century Fox movie, but Disney sold it to Netflix, and I watched it on Netflix. The first half 30 minutes of this movie I think are really good, but this is a kind of a reboot retelling of the movie Rear Window. I've never seen that movie, but this movie, Amy Adams for one, is a great actress. She's been putting out a lot of movies on Netflix lately. We have Hillbilly Elegy last year, which I actually loved. Most people hated that movie, but this movie is just kind of a mess. And I don't have many words to say about this movie other than it's kind of a mess. And really, all I have to say, Amy Adams does a good job here. There's a great cast. I mean, I think Gary Oldman's in this movie as well. But again, the execution on this movie is not very good. And that's why it comes in 43rd. I was actually really hoping to love this movie because I liked Hillbilly Elegy so much. And 20th Century didn't make this movie, and they've been putting out some great movies. But this, unfortunately, I think Disney's glad they sold this to Netflix. I think the acting and some of the suspense in here is kind of what keeps it from being some of the worst just in the middle because it is really a sloppy movie. In 42nd place, to me, is a movie probably most of you have never heard of. but it's Teen Titans Go See Space Jam. I actually did a review of this movie, and it's one of my most viewed reviews. And what is there to say about this movie? It's a lazy movie. Absolutely love the first Teen Titans Go movie. Teen Titans Go to the movies. It's clever. It's inventive. People who don't like the show love that movie. It's got a 92 on Rotten Tomatoes. The second one, Teen Titans Go versus Teen Titans, is okay. But to me, this third installment in this kind of trilogy doesn't work. And just like Spongebob, a movie based off of a cartoon, we got the third movie in each of those franchises. This is probably the laziest one in the Teen Titans Go franchise, because what this movie is basically is the Teen Titans watch Space Jam. You sold? No, I'm not really either, because what they do is they take the Teen Titans and they show you Space Jam. They don't show you the whole movie, just clips of it, like big. Actually, it's basically the whole movie, but they cut out a few scenes, and you just have the Teen Titans popping their heads in every once in a while, telling some joke that doesn't land. But to me, what does actually work about this movie is I love Space Jam, the original movie, and to me, the Teen Titans aren't the most annoying, so that's why it is in 42nd place and not last place. Just because I think there are some jokes that are actually funny in here, but for the most part, it's one of the laziest movies I've seen all year. In 41st place is the most disappointing movie I've seen all year, and that is Space Jam: A New Legacy. Now, I was really, really, really looking forward to this movie. It was one of my most anticipated movies of this year, and it really disappointed me. I mean, what they do with this movie is so just awful, because I was looking forward to this movie so much because I love the first Space Jam, like I just said, but it's LeBron James is a horrible actor for one, so he doesn't work really in here that well, especially against characters who aren't actually acting there with him because, well, they're not real. So he's not a good actor already, but now he's acting with really nobody else around him. So his acting performance is oddly bad, and probably the worst and most disappointing part is the final basketball game, which should be the best part of this movie, but it's so convoluted. First of all, it's like an hour, which is half the movie. The basketball scene's half the movie. That's way too long for the basketball scene in Space Jam. It takes too long, and it feels so chaotic. You can't tell really what's happening most of the time. Like, you can't tell really who's where, what just happened, because there's 100 things going on in a minute. And when it lasts an hour and it's super boring, it's the end basketball scene is what really wrecks the movie for me. And there's so many cameos that it kind of takes you. It'd be cool to have a couple cameos, but I think they overdid it with how many people were there, because how fast the basketball scenes go on, you can't tell who's who, because you'd have to pause the movie, rewind, go up to your TV and actually look at it and really try to see who that is, because there's so many characters and they just absolutely botched this sequel. It's not a good movie in my opinion. It's not a horrible movie, because I think the first half is a little fun. The first 30 minutes, you don't even see the Looney Tunes. So I guess there's only like 30 minutes of this movie I actually really liked. And that's when they're kind of going to these different worlds, recruiting all the other Looney Tunes characters. That was the best part, and that's kind of where it ends. I don't think anything else really in this movie is that great. There's really nothing here, unfortunately, because I was looking forward to this movie. In 40th place is The Addams Family 2, another movie that I was semi looking forward to. It wasn't really like, oh my gosh, I can't wait for this movie, but I still had anticipation for it. I was still interested in what they were going to do with a sequel to me, an okay animated movie. The first Addams Family animated movie from 2019, most people trash on it. To me, it's painfully average. I love the Addams Family as characters, but the first one was okay. I wanted to see what they would do with this, but what they did was they did what animated sequel or most sequels do, and they take you on a road trip. And that's exactly what they did in the Addams Family too, but one of the worst I've ever seen. This is one of the worst travels um, out there. I don't. It's They could have done so much more with the Addams Family and these different historical landmarks, these different like Niagara Falls. They could have done more with that and kind of brought more of the spooky, Halloweeny aspects, but they didn't, and that's to me why it's it's not a good movie. I still enjoyed parts of it. I think the voice acting in these two movies is phenomenal. I think Oscar Isaac, Charlize Theron, Nick Kroll, Bette Midler. I mean, the Chloe Grace Moritz, I think, is in this movie. She's really good too. Wallace Shawn is in here. Um, it's a great voice. Oh, Bill Hader does a okay job. I hate the villain here as well. What they do with the villain is such a weird story, and it could have been done and handled a lot better than it was. But I don't know. This movie just to me feels the actual road trip itself is so boring, but the voice cast nails it, and that's why it's not in the top 10 worst movies of the year. In 39th place is Paw Patrol the Movie. Now, I was not looking forward to this, but I saw it. It was on. I had Paramount Plus at the time. It came on there. I wanted to do a review on it, so I did. And I don't know. To me, from here on out, these movies are good. Oh, good to they're just average movies. This is your average family movie. Nothing much more to say about it. I'm not gonna keep talking about it because there's really nothing to Paw Patrol the movie other than just being a family friendly movie that doesn't appeal to me. It's not made for me. That's why it's in 39th place. In third place is the first documentary on this list, and that is Becoming Cousteau. This is about Jacques Cousteau. And this documentary is kind of boring. Where Paw Patrol the movie isn't really made for me. I like documentaries. This movie wasn't made for me really either. I never grew up watching Jacques Cousteau's movies, so I don't have a connection to him really like with his movies and stuff. So this documentary is talking all about that. It's on Disney Plus right now. It was in theaters for a bit, but it went then like right to Disney Plus after. So to me, it's just a painfully average documentary. My only real problem with this movie, other than just being about a subject matter I don't much about, is the fact that the subtitles small. The subtitles most because again he's French, so most of the movie, the documentary is in French because they're but make bigger subtitles. Like the sub are extremely small. Like I don't know. It's an odd decision, and it should have been an easy fix. Somebody should have been like, "Hey, those subtitles are too small for. So why don't you just fix them?" I mean, that's my only gripe with this movie is that the subtitles are a little small, and it's kind of to see at times just because, and it, again, focus really on a subject matter I care that much about. In 37th place is Spirit Tamed, the newest Spirit movie and one of the newest DreamWorks movies. DreamWorks has been in a rut. DreamWorks has made the last four movies and sequels, which all of them have been okay, really. Other than Crude's A New Age, that movie was really good. The other ones are just okay. They're average. And this is another one of those. The first Spirit movie is great in my opinion. I think how they handle Spirit and he's not actually a talking horse is really mature of DreamWorks. But this movie, it's kind of a sequel slash reboot because he's not supposed to be a pet. He's not supposed to be in a cage. That's kind of the whole message of the first movie. He wants to be free. And this movie, they're trying to tame him, and at the end, he's kind of tamed. So that's kind of the movie. This is not made for me either, but it was on Hulu, and I have to watch every DreamWorks movie that comes out for rankings. So I had to check this one out. It's not my demographic. The first Spirit movie is really good, but this one kind of just changes demographics, changes the characters, and just feels really weird for a DreamWorks movie. The animation, okay, so this is a sequel to Spirit, really, because this is kind of the sequel slash reboot of the show on Netflix, which I've never watched, and that's kind of a reboot of the original Spirit. It's really odd they decided to even make this movie. I don't even think it made much money at the box office. I don't really get the purpose of making a Spirit sequel. I don't have a problem with people making sequels, but to me, this is one of the movies I don't see why they needed to. I don't see, because there's not a lot of money in it either. So that's why Spirit aimed, because it's not aimed so weird. The sequel comes in 37th place. There are some good voice acting. Andre Brower's in here, does a really good job. You also have Jake Gyllenhaal and Walton Goggins. They're all great, but to me, it's just not for me. And this feels like a really kind of a movie aimed for little kids. Most animated movies, like Pixar movies, they're made for kind of everybody to enjoy. This, unfortunately, not everybody can enjoy. In 36th place is Bad Trip. Now, I actually really like Bad Trip. This movie is with Eric Andre, and this movie is really funny. My only problem, and the reason why it's kind of low, is because it doesn't really have a real story. It's kind of just a prank movie. It's kind of like Borat, but with Andre Brower and Lil Rel Howery, I think. Yeah, he's in here. He's had a great year. And then you also have Tiffany Haddish, who's great. It's such a bizarre movie, and it's so fun, and there's just some really weird scenes, and it's just a fun movie, but there's no real story or plot. That's why it's in 36th place. But I still really liked Bad Trip, and I still found a lot of enjoyment out of this movie. In 35th place is The Boss Baby Family Business. Now, to me, this is a better movie than Spirit on. This movie isn't as good as the sequel. And I think that's where my big gripe is. I don't love the first movie, but this movie does have some juvenile humor, but I think Alec Baldwin does a really good job voicing the character of Boss Baby in this movie. You also have James Marsden in here, and Jeff Goldblum, who all do a really good job. This is, again, another kind of just average animated movie. It's your typical kids movie. I don't think I'll ever rewatch this movie unless I have to do like a DreamWorks ranking, where I kind of forgot about this movie. So if I have to ever rewatch it again, hopefully it's better. But on first watch, I didn't care for it. This might be controversial, but in 34th place, I have Halloween Kills. Probably in people's bottom 10 or most disappointing. I enjoyed this movie. I know there's no real story in this movie. It's kind of just a middle chapter to the brand new Halloween trilogy, for say. It's kind of the middle chapter. There's not really a real story, and they kind of combine two stories, but it feels a lot like a middle chapter, but it is a fun movie. I had a lot of fun with this movie. Michael Myers is great in this movie. He's just unstoppable, and that's why I enjoyed this movie. I know my only problem really is Jamie Lee, other than it being a middle chapter, not really feeling like a movie. It kind of feels like a trailer for the next movie. But Jamie Lee Curtis is only in it for like a minute. I mean, not a minute. She's in it for like 20 minutes, but she's just sitting in the hospital bed the whole time. So we don't get much of her. But again, I hope Halloween Ends next year is really good, because I've enjoyed this new trilogy of Halloween movies, and I hope it ends with a bang. Unfortunately, the middle chapter is kind of just okay. It's a good movie. I enjoyed myself when watching this. I watched it on Peacock, and I had fun with it. In 33rd place is is Wish Dragon. This is kind of the rip off. That's what people are calling it, but to me, it's not really a rip off of Aladdin. Oh, the movie world is in the live chat. Hello, nice to thank you for coming and watching this. But uh, Wish Dragon to me is another okay animated movie. There's a lot on this list that I watched just so I'd have more movies to talk about. This is one of those movies. A lot of people are praising this movie. To me, it feels really similar. I like where this plays. I think some of the voice acting in here, this is made by Sony Animation, but at the end of the day, there's not much here that really sticks with me. It's kind of just like, yeah, that was a good animated movie. I enjoyed that animated movie. It's a fun movie. Nothing that's going to make me keep thinking about this movie, though. Next up, in 32nd place is the Loud House movie. There's a lot of animated movies on this list, but that's because, I don't know, that's just what I got around to watching, because normally they're shorter, like an hour and 20 minutes, so I can watch them a lot quicker. Loud House movie, I absolutely love the Loud House, the show, one of my favorites of all time. The movie is still really enjoyable. There are parts of it that do feel a lot like the show, but to me, I think they didn't go all the way with some things that they could have, and I actually wish they would have stayed in Royal Woods, or at least not in Royal Woods, but like bring in more characters up from the show for cameos at least. But they didn't, and that's okay because I still enjoy myself. In 31st place is Flora and New Ulysses. This is the Disney Plus original, I believe, and it's a fine movie. Like, I put a note on there and it says fun family movie. Yeah, and that's kind of all it is. It's kind of a squirrel girl movie who's a Marvel character, but it's not a Marvel movie. Uh, so basically, the movie's just, here's a little girl, here's a squirrel with superpowers. What are they going to get into? And that's all it is. It's a harmless movie. I had some fun with it. Ben Schwartz and Danny Pudi, great job in here. Just actors in here, and that was really fun for me to see. In 30th place is a brand new documentary. It's okay. It's an okay documentary. Nothing really special or that interesting in here, but what puts it so high is there is a good production value to it. It's just, that's all I really got to say about it. In 29th place is The Little Things, a movie really looking forward to because I like these crime movies, but it also has Denzel Washington, Rami Malek, and Jared Leto, and the main three actors in here all do a really good job. A lot of people think this is a bad movie. I really enjoyed it because while it is really slow at parts and you really feel that, I still really enjoyed it because it is a crime movie and there's a mystery, and kind of not really solving the mystery kind of leaves it open-ended and up for interpretation. Who was the real killer? And I really enjoy this. I think Rami Malek does a great job in here. Denzel Washington's phenomenal, but I think Jared Leto steals the show in this movie for me. He was just really good in this movie. In 28th place is Army of Thieves. This is the sequel slash spin-off slash for Army of the Dead, which is a movie that you'll see higher up on this list. But Army of Thieves, I enjoy for this. This movie is really, I really had fun watching this movie because it is a bank heist movie done right. Lockdown should have been this movie. I really, really enjoyed this movie. I think the character of Deer is a really cool character, and that's why I think this movie's so good because again, he is a cool character. But also the bank heist, some of the cast in here is really good. Just it's a fun movie. It's not a movie that's outstanding, but it's a movie I had fun with. In 27 is Vivo, one of the better animated movies of the year. Vivo is a movie that I wasn't really looking forward to, but when I was watching it, I was pretty surprised how good it actually was. Lin-Manuel Miranda stars as this monkey who can talk. I wish they didn't make him talk. I think it could have been a lot more powerful, but of course, he's got to sing. But to fun animated movie, but I think the emotional beats movie are what make it stand above other movies like Wish Dragon and the Spongebob movie. It really elevates it for me, and that's why it comes in 27th place. Whoops. In 26th place for me is F9. This was my first movie back in theaters for this year, and I really enjoyed myself. I think why it's so low is because it is a dumb kind of a movie. Got to turn your brain off to really enjoy because you're not going to get a really deep story in here. It feels familiar to the Fast and Furious movies, but it just, my only prop, like I have fun with it. It's a fun action movie, and I love action movies, so that's why it's so high compared to some other movies. But my only problem is it does get a little ridiculous at times. Like they go into space in a vehicle that doesn't even look like it could make it 100 feet in the air. But I don't know. This movie's kind of just, you just turn your brain off. And to me, it was a really good movie to go back to the theaters because there's a lot of people there to see the 9th movie in the Fast and Furious franchise. 25th place is Operation Varsity Blues, the college admissions scandal. Now, a lot of you probably have never heard of this movie, but it's a Netflix original documentary, except for it's a really interesting documentary because they do have actors acting out what they were doing with narration, talking about, and it is a documentary, but there are clips where they have actors kind of acting like the criminals would. And this movie was really interesting. This documentary was. I like these crime documentaries, and it really had me intrigued with this whole scandal that, of course, everybody really hears about. And it was kind of interesting to see the man kind of behind a lot of these, and it was really cool to see that again. Plus, with all the acting in here. To me, it just makes for a fun documentary and a really interesting one that I kept watching the whole time and I was really interested in it because I just wanted to know more about what happened. In 24th place is Godzilla vs. Kong. Similarly to F9, great movie, but it's another one of those blockbusters where you just turn your brain off. It's just one of those movies where you just have fun. You just enjoy yourself when you're watching this movie because it's Godzilla fighting Kong. And that's why I like this movie, because we do get elements of that in here. I think a big problem with this MonsterVerse franchise is that you do have too much focus on the humans. Similarly to Tom and Jerry, you care more about the monsters than the humans. How they handled the humans in here, I think, better than King of the Monsters, which absolutely handled them horribly, which is the worst movie in the MonsterVerse franchise. But this is probably my second favorite movie in the MonsterVerse franchise because it does have elements of the other ones, like the weaker problems, like the human beings, because I don't know, it's subplots that you don't really care about. You also have stuff like Godzilla actually fighting Kong, which looks really cool and was awesome to see in a movie. And cool to see that, and it was a great blockbuster. Again, not one that's going to make you really think. This isn't The Father or Minari, but It's Godzilla versus Kong. In 23rd place for me is Vacation Friends, a big surprise actually of this year. This is a movie again with Lil Rel Howery, John Cena, and others, and they're great in here. Like, this is the best comedy I think for me, at least of the year. Like, just straight up comedy. It was hilarious. I had fun. John Cena has really started to put out some good movies, and he's really started to actually be kind of a semi good actor. Like with this in the Suicide Squad, he's really good in Vacation Friends. It's another one of those comedies that, while it isn't to the level of movies like Jack and Jill from Adam Sandler, it feels kind of like a Will Seth Rogen movie that it's just fun, and you're not supposed to get a big huge message, or it's not supposed to be deeper you think. It's just supposed to be fun. And Vacation Friends is definitely a fun movie. In 22nd place is one of the better animated movies of the year, Back to the Outback. This is a movie about Australian animals, and this is one of the most recent movies I've watched. And I think this was going to be on the levels of Bigfoot Family or Charming, but it actually wasn't. This was one of the better animations of the year, and how they handled the voice acting in here was so much better than Bigfoot Family. How they handled the story, the characters, the message, all worked really well. It's a great animated movie. And if you have Netflix, I recommend watching it. It's really cool to see Netflix actually making good animated movies, because normally they don't. I mean, you do have movies like Klaus, which is a great movie, but they haven't been making great animated movies. This is the exception. In 21st place is Nomad Land. Nomad Land. There you go. What to say about this movie? This is the only real like Oscar movie I've watched this year. I wanted to watch the other ones. I didn't want to pay a lot of money to watch them. They're not on really any big streaming services. This one was put on Hulu and in theaters because, of course, Disney owns Nomadland and it owns Hulu. So that was kind of nice to see. But my only problem with this movie really is it is a little slow at times. But for the rest of the movie, we do get to see Frances McDormand show her acting chops, and she's a great actress. That was really cool to see. I think the message in here and the cinematography and how Chloe Zhao made this was the Best Picture winner. And Chloe Zhao is a great director. I know some people didn't care for Eternals. I loved Eternals, and I loved Nomadland. So to me, this was an absolute win. In 20th place is Loveheart, a Christmas movie on Netflix that was funny. This was a great comedy. It really had heart, and it was funny, and that's why it's in 20th place. I don't have really anything else to say, but that's kind of it. Army of the Dead. This is a zombie action movie that feels a lot like Suicide Squad, the original Suicide Squad, but done right. Now, I love this movie. I like the franchise. It's on Netflix. It just has been coming out this year. Zack Snyder, this is one of his better movies. I'm not a big fan of his DC movies, but Army of the Dead is an absolute win. I think the action here is great. The only problem I have is it's a little too long, but that can be forgiven. The action is insane. Some of the horror in here is really fun and entertaining. Dave Bautista's great. Whole cast is really entertaining. In 18th place is The Tomorrow War, an Amazon Prime original movie starring Chris Pratt. Real quick, I will be right back. Sorry about that. But The Tomorrow War, starring Chris Pratt, is a really great action movie. I think Chris Pratt is a great actor, and he's really entertaining in these action movies. We also got J.K. Simmons giving a great performance. J.K. Simmons has been on fire this last like decade and a half. He's been really great, and he's great in this movie too. And the action in this movie is also insane. The final scene, or the big battle kind of at the end, works really well, and it's an amazing concept for an action movie, and it's really one of the most unique movies of the year. First Marvel movie of the Actually, I think it's the first comic book movie, but that's Black Widow. Most people would have this kind of in their bottom half, but I enjoyed this. Uh, I enjoyed this movie. This used to be my top 10 until I saw more movies and realized and rewatched Black Widow, and Black Widow's still really good, and I still really enjoy Black Widow, because Scarlett Johansson does a good job in this movie, but Florence Pugh and David Harbour steal the show. They are by far the best part of this movie. They're so funny, and they bring so much heart to this movie. It works so well seeing them in here. It was so cool seeing Yelena Belova then also show up. I really want a Red Guardian movie because David Harbour, man, was he great in this movie. Number 16, Val. Now, a lot of people have this in their top 10. This is a documentary about Val Kilmer and his kind of whole life story. It was on Amazon Prime, and I was really looking forward to this movie, and I loved it. This is probably the second best documentary of the year, in my opinion. It's such a good movie. It's so great to see his life behind the scenes on some of these movies. His struggles with cancer. It was such a deep and moving documentary, and such a well done movie. Val, I think, made this movie himself, and his son narrates this movie, and it's just such a good movie that I highly recommend. Val, if you're a fan of Val Kilmer's movies and just kind of want to see the behind the scenes process of some of these older movies, because while this is mainly about Val Kilmer, we also do get to see scenes behind some of the movies he was in, which is really fun. We get more information about like the Batman and how his experience on that. That was all really cool to see, and that's why Val comes in 16th place. In 15th place is Raya and the Last Dragon. This is the Disney animated movie of the year, and it's an action movie, and I like action movies. I think this is a really great movie because the action here is phenomenal. I think the animation is some of the best we've seen from the studio. It's just a great movie. The voice acting in here is great. Kelly Marie Tran from Star Wars is in here, really good in here. Just all around a phenomenal cast with great animation, great action, a great story, and phenomenal mythology, all making a great movie. In 14th place, Jungle Cruise. Jungle Cruise is one of the few movies I saw in theaters this year, and I had a blast with this movie. I think Dwayne Johnson and Emily Blunt have great chemistry. Jack Whitehall, this is the first time I've ever been introduced to him as an actor, but then I watched his show with his dad on Netflix, and he's hilarious. And he's great in here. He's probably my favorite character in the movie. You also got Jesse Plemons in here and Paul Giamatti, and it all just makes for a phenomenal movie. Like, I love this movie. It's such a great adventure. It feels like Pirates of the Caribbean or Caribbean, but man, is this movie just a blast. And this movie's not, again, going to go for best movies, but this is one of the best blockbusters of the year that I had a lot of fun with. Some people didn't like this movie, I loved it. I think the chemistry between all the characters worked. Plus, it's a great adventure movie, and to me, this rivals with some of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. Of course, not the first one, but some of the sequels. I think this is better than all four sequels. Really good movie. There we go. In 13th place, Mitchell's versus the Machines. A lot of people have this in their top 10. I wish I could, but to me, the top 10 are better than the Mitchells versus the Machines. But don't get me wrong, this is a great movie. This is one of the best animated movies we've seen from Sony this year. And just in general, I think this and Spider-Verse going in the right direction from where they came, like with Emoji Movie and the Open Season franchise. But this is such a good movie. We have the animation style of Spider-Verse, which to me works really well. And also DreamWorks Bad Guys coming out next year has that animation style. I don't want it to be overused, but in this movie, it's absolutely crazy how they use the animation, and I love how they use it because it's such a bizarre movie with a great voice cast. We got Danny McBride, Maya Rudolph, but we also have cameos from like Eric Andre and Conan O'Brien. It just makes for a great family adventure movie with a great story about technology, and just to me it works so well, and how families interact nowadays with how like technology has become so prevalent. Great message, great humor. This is actually a really funny movie too, and that's why it comes in 13th place. In 12th place for me is Tiger. This was actually my top 10 before I watched two other movies that are now in my top 10. But Tiger's the best documentary of the year for me. We get a lot of just fun. Well, not fun, never mind. We get a lot of stuff with Tiger in here that it's really interesting to see all this. I've already covered this movie at length, really, so I don't want to get into it that much. A lot of these top 10 movies I'm not going to talk about that much because I've already covered them in my top 10 favorite movies of the year or in other reviews, but I'll still give my general thoughts. In 11th place is Zack Snyder's Justice League. This movie is such a great comic book movie. It's such a great action and Zack Snyder movie. It's a great, just all around movie. But my only problems with it is it's 4 hours long, and that's what's holding it back really from being in my top 5. Also, it's kind of a cut of an old movie, so it's really not its own movie. A lot of people say it is. IMDb, Wikipedia, most places recognize it as its own movie, as do I. But to me, it's more of a director's cut of a movie than its own movie, and that's why it's in 11th place. If this was just the straight up original version of Justice League, it would have easily been in top 3. But to me, it's a little too long, so that's why it's in 11th place. Here we go. In 10th place, Encanto. I absolutely loved Encanto. This movie is really, really great. Encanto is one of the best animated movies of the year. I think Stephanie Beatrice is okay in this movie, but man, this movie is really good. I mean, some of the stuff in here works extremely well. Like the animation really works. And to me, it's just phenomenal. To me, it's just a really good animated movie, and I absolutely loved it. Some people don't think this is a little worse than Raya and the Last Dragon. Not to me. This is better than Raya and the Last Dragon because it also incorporates family, and the music's great in here, but the animation looks phenomenal. And we got John Leguizamo giving another great animated performance. In ninth place is Fatherhood. I don't want to talk about this movie too much because I've already talked about it at length. I'm pretty sure I did a review about this movie, and I've also talked about it in my top 10 favorite movies of the year. But Fatherhood is a very interesting movie because I was not really looking forward to this movie. I watched it because, man, is Kevin Hart, can he balance humor and comedy? Because I think this is the best example of him balancing the two things. He's really funny in here, but it's also a heartfelt family story. That's why it's in ninth place. In eighth place, Eternals. Eternals is a phenomenal MCU movie. It's definitely top 15 MCU for me. I know a lot of people, this is on their bottom half. Sean Chandler has it in last. It's a little much, but I love Eternals. I think Eternals is a great movie. I think they handle all this world building so well, and you really just get thrown into this new kind. It's not a new world, but you just get the mythology, and the cast is one of the best ensembles I've seen in an MCU movie, other than a team up movie. But this is a really good movie. There's some humor sprinkled throughout, but overall, it's a semi-serious movie, and I think that was favorite. In seventh, Bo Burnham Inside. This is a really phenomenal film. I'm gonna call it a film because this is a really, it's really an interesting film because you do have all these different elements thrown into one movie that I think makes a masterpiece. I think this is a masterpiece of filmmaking, but it's not going to be in my top 5 just because I feel like the other movies on this list I enjoyed more, but I do believe Side is a great movie. In sixth place is A Quiet Place Part 2. This is one of those movies that I watched recently, and it made my top 10. I really enjoy the first Quiet Place. It's not, I believe it is a little overrated, but I still really enjoy the first Quiet Place. But A Quiet Place Part 2, to me, exceeds the original. I really love A Quiet Place Part 2. What they do with Cillian Murphy in here and the kids and Emily Blunt and just the whole world building. We get flashbacks of what really happened. And to me, it kind of advances the story. And I can't wait till we get that off movie, which is coming out in 2 years, I believe. It's the third movie in the franchise. And I really am loving this franchise. And John Krasinski, he's a great director. And I'm surprised that he could, like, I thought A Quiet Place was just a one hit, but no, A Quiet Place Part 2 to me exceeds the original. I absolutely loved it. One of the best sequels of the year. In fifth place for me, though, is Luca. Luca is one of Pixar's best movies in modern last 8 years, I believe. It's one of their better movies because it is so simplistic that it nails it on the head. It's such a great movie because it is so simple. There's not much to it, but Pixar nails it. It's a slice of life movie with great animation, and I don't know. To me, this movie is just really, really good. Okay, so that was my fifth favorite movie. We're now getting the top 4, which honestly, the top 5, I believe, phenomenal movies and are amazing movies, and I would definitely rewatch. And honestly, most of the top 10, I would love to rewatch. But number 4 for me, Spider-Man: No Way Home. This might come to a surprise of why it's so low. And it's fallen actually a little bit because I've seen another movie yesterday that I think is better than Spider-Man: No Way Home, or at least I prefer it. Home is a really great MCU movie. It's like one of the best comic book movies. But to me, the first half is kind of what keeps it from being number one and one of my favorite comic book movies. I recognize it is one of the better comic book movies, but it's not one of my favorites. The last half of this movie is phenomenal. I would say, other than Endgame, this is the best half of a movie, a comic book movie. I think Endgame still takes the cake, but I think this is the second best second half of a movie that's a comic book movie. Because everything, spoilers, with Toby and Andrew is phenomenal. Just talking about their movies and what they've been through with all the other Spider-Man really just makes it work for me and really makes this movie great. In third place, American Underdog. Now, I did post a quick short review yesterday of this movie. This is the movie I watched, and I fell in love with this movie. This movie is so great. It, like I said in my review, it nails the formula, which feels very familiar. Like, we've seen this before in many, like, remember the Titans, many other football movies, but this nails it for me with Zachary Levi in here, Dennis Quaid, just a great cast, a great story, and great directors. I honestly believe the Erwin brothers are an underrated directing duo. Some of their movies as of late, I think, have been really good, and I can't wait to see what they do next because American Underdog, man, was this a good movie? It balanced emotion and heart and comedy with a great, inspiring story, and I absolutely loved American Underdog. One of the best non-franchise films. Actually, it's the best non-franchise of the year. In second place for me is the Suicide Squad. I'm not going to harp on the movie too much because I love it. There are problems with it, but I don't want to talk about the problems because I think the positives in this movie far outweigh the negatives. First of all, the humor in this movie is top notch, and James Gunn handles so many characters so well. The first 10 minutes of this movie, hilarious, and I love seeing all these kind of B-level actors who I all enjoy watching. I love watching them on screen. I love seeing them in a comic book movie, and then they just die in the first 10 minutes. To me, that was really smart of James Gunn because it kind of subverts your expectations, and you're like, what could happen now? There's a lot of twists in this movie. Rick Flag is great, and I think John Cena is phenomenal in this movie. And to me, just a really good comic book movie. But in first place for me is Shangchi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, easily my favorite movie of the year and one of my favorite MCU movies. I absolutely love this movie. It handles the martial arts with this epic family story so well. They have this kind of family that kind of rules this area, and it balances so well. Tony Leung is great in here. Simu Liu, I love him on Kim's Convenience. He's hilarious on that show, and he's great in the MCU. I cannot wait to see what Kevin Feige has in store for these characters because, man, was this a great comic book movie. And not only was it a great comic book movie, but it was just a great movie in general. It was one of the best movies of the year, actually the best movie of the year, top 5 MCU movie for me easily. I absolutely loved it. I've seen it 3 times already, and I cannot wait to own it on Blu-ray because Shang-Chi, it's a great movie. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you tuned into this when it was live, or if you're watching and you stayed through the whole video, if you're watching when it's not a live stream, thank you so much for tuning in. Leave a like down below because it does help my channel with the whole algorithm of YouTube. And comment, what are some of your favorite movies of the year? What were some of the movies that were just okay? Or some movies that you did not like? Do you agree with my list? I don't think anybody will really agree with some of the placings on this list, why some things are lower than some people might have them, or why they're higher. I want to hear your thoughts on my list down below, and I also want to see yours, and we can have a discussion about the movies and some of the best movies of 2021, because I believe this was a great year for movies in general. Especially coming off of 2020, which was a horrible year for movies. Not a lot of great movies came out that year. That's why I didn't do this list, and I didn't do a lot of top 10 lists because there just wasn't a lot of great movies. This year, we got a first $1 billion movie since the pandemic started with Spider-Man No Way Home. And we got a lot of blockbusters, and we got a lot of great, just smaller movies like American Underdog and Nomad Land, which I believe are some of the better movies of 2021. So overall, it was a great year for just movies in general. And I cannot wait for 2022 because there's a lot of movies that I cannot wait to see next year. And I'm going to do this video again next year. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, you can check out some more videos right now.